There. All right. Okay. Hey. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. This morning is going to be a little more of our ongoing theme at NANOG we've had for the last few meetings of the 100 gig stuff and 100 gig issues. We're going to have Mr. Hankins give us a quick update on what's been going on with the IEEE and how much faster they're working this week. And then we're going to go ahead and have a panel up here. One item I'll point out about our panel, we were supposed to have 4 panelists. One of them is missing in action. So we're going to try and cover as much of the material we had planned initially with our 3 panelists we have up here, and we'll see how that goes. We might get some time back since we only have 3 instead of 4. So we'll go ahead and roll on here. Greg, come on up.
Is something loaded?
Oh, it should be on here. Let's take a peek. Excuse. You PowerPoint? PDF. PDF. You. Yep. Swing. Was it Control F12? I forget.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start off with a quick update on where the IEEE is. And for those of you that have been paying attention to the regular updates that we've been giving, it'll be a little bit of a summary and then some new stuff. This is the customary slide that I show you that says I'm not with the IEEE and I don't represent the IEEE in any sort of formal position, and these are all my own views. So kind of to back up to last May, there was a lot of discussion and dissension in the IEEE, and it didn't look like we're going to make very much progress because of the 40 gig and the 100 gig rates that were being discussed. So basically everything worked out well, and last July everyone came together and there were a lot of compromises that were made, and things started to move forward. So there's a number of sort of housekeeping and documents that you have to do in the IEEE. So you've heard us talk about the PAR and 5 criteria and things like that. So those were completed, and then there's a number of committees that have to approve those documents, and that also happened last year. So the good news is that higher speed Ethernet is growing up, and we've reached the next phase, which is to become a task force. So that was a significant advance that was made last year. So now we have an official letter, which is BA, so you'll hear us talk about .3BA. That means 40 and 100 gig Ethernet. And the key takeaways here are that there's going to be one amendment to the specification. So that means that 40 and 100 gig, the specification is going to be delivered at the same time. Now that doesn't mean that we might see pre-standard 40 come before pre-standard 100 or maybe vice versa, but that just means that the official specification is going to be done at the same time. So a lot of people ask me, will we see 40 gig before 100 gig? Well, the specification answer is no, because it's going to be delivered at the same time. Hopefully we'll see stuff in the marketplace before that, though. Here's a summary of the objectives that were adopted that are common. Basically, this says we're going to do everything that Ethernet does already. So we're going to use the same frame size and use the same Ethernet frame and things like that. Now, the one item at the bottom which says provide appropriate support for OTN is kind of vague, especially in comparison to the other objectives, which list specific numbers and formats and things like that. So I have another slide on what exactly that means coming up. Here are the adopted reach and rate objectives. Now, the target applications are what has been defined in the IEEE and where people in the IEEE think these applications will be deployed most. It doesn't mean that you won't see 40 gig be deployed for a WAN technology or something like that, especially after the last meeting. So basically what's been defined so far is for 40 gig reaches, this is targeted at server and computing applications. So for example, blade servers that need high capacity interconnects into an aggregation or core network, or backplane Ethernet that would run at 40 gigs and tie multiple servers together in a backplane reach. So the specifications that we're working on so far are 1 meter backplane, a 10 meter copper cable assembly, and then 100 meter OM3 multimode. Now, what has come up at the last IEEE meeting is where the big question mark is a possible 10 kilometer single mode reach. I have another slide coming up on that one. For 100 gig, this is targeted at aggregation and core networks. So we have a 10 meter copper cable assembly, 100 meter on multimode, and then 10 and 40 kilometer on single mode fiber. There are a number of questions and architectural issues that are being discussed in the IEEE, and this is a complicated slide, so I just want to touch on it. But basically, we have to figure out the architecture and figure out, okay, are we going to do N lanes over some sort of multiple lambda, or a single lambda, or are we going to sort of glue multiple MAC chips together and have some sort of multiple instances of PHYs? And there's a good presentation which kind of summarizes what's been going on so far and the current state of things for each of these three options, which is the bottom URL. So that's one of the major issues that has to be worked out. And there are advantages and disadvantages to each, and people say, well, what's it going to end up being? And as always, it's going to be a trade-off for cost, the current technology, feasible technology, and also some politics thrown in. So here's what we're going to do for OTN. This is quite vague, so I thought I'd put together a slide on this. Basically, the ITU and IEEE have established a liaison together, and there are several people that actually attend both meetings, and they will somehow work together to define mapping for 40 and 100 gig into the ODU and OTN networks. The ITU has already agreed to find a way to map 40 gig into existing ODU3, and they've also agreed to define an ODU4, which would somehow transport 100 gig. And how that is exactly going to work is still to be determined, because we don't know what 100 gig is going to look like yet, and we don't know what the feasible technology is. But the good news and the point that the takeaway point is that we're working together on this, and it will work over the WAN. So for physical layer specifications, the other questions that we're answering are how exactly is this going to work? So we've defined these backplane and copper cable reaches, but we're not sure how to do it yet. So the current consensus is to use a lot of the technology from the backplane Ethernet, which is 10G based KR, and reuse that for 40 and 100 over copper. But the other interesting thing is that there's really no media defined. So for fiber, we have multimode and single mode, which are well-defined specifications. For copper, the world is sort of open to define a new cable specification or use something existing. For example, a twin-X cable that is used for CX4 could be reused. So we really have to define what this copper is even going to look like first. Fiber is much more, like I said, it's much more clear because we have the multimode and single mode fiber specifications. We just have to figure out how to make it work over those fibers. So possible things are a parallel or ribbon cable for the multi-mode reach, and then some sort of WDM, or it could even be a single serial wave for the longer distances. Now, I did mention that people have brought up the need for a 40 gig 10 kilometer reach now. So this is very interesting because initially we're targeting this at server and computing applications, and now there's a 10 kilometer reach, and providing OTN compatibility. So it looks like 40 gig is turning into a WAN technology, despite people's objections and better judgment. But so this is a serious consideration, because if we're going to add another reach objective, we have to go and revisit the project specifications and the PAR and 5 criteria, and you have to do all these justifications. You have to justify, is it technically feasible, is there market potential, and all these other things. So that could slow things down again for a few more months if it's decided that we want to adopt this reach. And then the other questions are back to the architecture. What's it going to look like? Is it going to be one architecture for both speeds? Is there stuff that we can reuse? Is there stuff that we want to reuse? And then there's also some management things that we have to update. So SNMP MIBs and things like that. And then the last one is interesting because people don't really think about it, but you have to define test procedures. So ideally, you want us to give you the same bits that you put into the network. So we have to define test procedures to make sure that we have all these patterns that we can test to make sure that all the bits come out the right way. This is a new slide that I made up that kind of shows you how this project compares to 10 gig. And the point of this slide is that people ask, well, why is this taking so long, and why don't we have it now, and why aren't we working on higher terabit Ethernet? And the point is that this is getting to be a big project. If you look at 10 gig, there was an initial 10 gig specification, and then sort of over the past couple of years, people added on different reaches and medium to the original 10 gig specification. So with .3BA, we're doing 40 and 100, so we're doing 2 rates in one project, and we're doing a gazillion different reaches and specifications in the same project. So it's getting to be a big project, and that's why it's taken so long. Where are we now? We're actually almost at the sort of the 2-year halfway point in the IEEE. So like I said, the significant thing was to get into task force phase. So we're there now, and we expect, if everything continues on the path as it has in previous projects for 10 gig, for example, if we follow the 10 gig pace, then we should have a standard out in Q2 of 2010. And then the next question people ask is, well, when will we see stuff on the market? And we'll probably start to see some pre-standard stuff in 2009, and there will be some interoperability events that people are already talking about. Here's a timeline that's much more detailed that you can read in your spare time. And then here's future meetings and things that we're working on. So, this is really the phase where we talk about specifications and then actually decide a solution. And then in September, the first draft, which is draft 1.0, will be written, and that is the specification. So that's going to be in September, and that's a significant milestone again. And then the last couple slides, more information is here. All the presentations that have been given at the IEEE are available online. You can go and read them. And then the last slide is 5 slides long of how the IEEE process works, and you can read that in your spare time. Questions?
If we have any questions for Greg, we can go ahead and take a couple, but if not, we'll move on to the panel. Stand up for a question? Nope. All right. Thanks, Greg.